We have to earn the right in our technology organization to talk about the great things that we can help move our business forward. The new AI capabilities, the new digital capabilities. We have to earn that right.
Welcome to Hyperconnected Journeys, the podcast where we explore how enterprises are reimagining their digital infrastructure to innovate and grow. I'm your host, Sunny Chowdhury, and I'm also the Director of Global Enterprise Sales at Tata Communications. Today, I'm joined by Sam Burns, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at IGM Financial. We're also joined by Raj, Solutioning Leader at Tata Communications. Sam, Raj, it's great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Sunny. And Sam, looking forward to an
Me
exciting
too.
discussion.
So we'll jump right into it. We're going to cover a few segments here today, and it's really about talking about the now and the transformation from before. So we'll just kick it off here. So let's start with the now. So scaling with purpose is the theme of this segment. Sam, I want to start with the present. IGM Financial supports millions of Canadians through its wealth and asset management business. From a CIO's perspective, from your perspective, what are your top priorities in ensuring the technology backbone can scale reliably within the business?
So first of all, good question. There's so many priorities for myself and my peers that sit in this seat, but I could probably boil it down to three, and there's a phrase I'm going to start with. It's called earning the right. Um, we have to earn the right in our technology organization to talk about the great things that we can help move our business forward. The new AI capabilities, the new digital capabilities. We have to earn that right. And what I mean by that is we can't get in front of our businesses. So priority one is safe, secure, stable platforms. If we don't have that, uh, we get in front of our businesses. We impede them from being successful, and us as a firm from being successful. So we position it as earning the right, and that's priority one. And those platforms need to be not just secure; they need to be stable, but also run efficiently. Like we're moving, we're in the cloud. We gotta make sure we operate that in an efficient manner. So that's priority one. Priority two, just really simplifies. If we've earned the right to do that, what are we doing? Well, we're delivering great experiences. That's what we do in my CIO organization. Those great experiences range from our clients to our advisors and then to our employees. And so, if we can deliver great experiences, it could be in the fact that these types of interactions work every day to financial planning experiences for our clients, to making sure our advisors can see consolidated views of their clients, to making sure our quantitative investing team can do great analysis to create an edge for them in in their portfolio management capabilities. So that spectrum is just about delivering great experiences. So I really see it as those two, and then the third is one thing I've learned in my career over this time is you can't do any of the first two unless you got great people. And so technology is at a wonderful time right now. And you know what? The best way to deliver on those first two priorities is just to have great people and have awesome people, people that care, people that walk in and want to make a difference every day. And sometimes it's hard to find those people, no matter where they're in. Sometimes it's harder in technology, but I feel this time right now in technology, you get some great people.
Yeah, so the people go a long way, right? You got the best.
I really like, Sunny, I really like the point that he said, earning the right. I've not really heard it so succinctly anywhere else or from anyone else. Yeah, love it.
I'll give you a little story. It started with it was the CEO for one of our companies. So IGM Financial is this really set of wealth and asset management, and then we have kind of heads of each of those, and we have a CEO that runs IGM. And we were in a time a couple of years ago where our systems weren't as stable, and so we were having some issues. Advisors were noticing it, and and it wasn't great. It was hard to have a conversation that says, well, how do I deliver this next great experience when the experience we're delivering right now is not great? And so I think I said it in one of those meetings. I said, we, meaning I and my organization, we need to earn the right to be able to sit in front of you and your business teams to be able to say, no, 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 let's take this to the next level. And it came out of that conversation, and then we coined it in our strategy. We refreshed our strategy about a year and a half ago, and said, guys, like, let's just make sure we earn the right to have those really innovative, great conversations every day. And if you think of those
Love it.
many technology organizations and the board and C-suite, etc., you seem to talk about the 20 or 30%, the cool projects, the things we're doing, the great experiences enabled, and then in technology, the 70% of what we do is making sure this stuff runs every day, and it runs well and it's safe and secure. So I think we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, well said. And Raj, if we go to you, you know, when you look at financial services more broadly, what do you think are the best practices that you're seeing, in that industry with scaling network infrastructure, so remaining helping these companies remain both secure and agile at the same time?
When we think about financial industry, right, one of the first things that I think about is that this industry is extremely complex, not because of what Sam just mentioned in terms of what the great customer experience should be, earning the right, but also because it has very strict policies, regulations, etc. And therefore, if you look at this industry, the move to cloud is has been a bit slow, right? And it has started over the last few years, but this industry still has some data centers. Now, when you think about a combination of meeting the policy, the regulation, and Sunny, when I'm talking about regulation policy, these are very, very region specific, right? In a specific region, it will be something else, to other region, it will be something else, and so on and so forth. So the complexity is very, very high. With that comes the complexity that you go into the cloud because you have some workloads in the cloud. And Sam, I'm sure you'll agree to this. There'll be some workloads which is there in the cloud, some workloads which is there in your data centers, and some workloads which are in public clouds, GCP, Azure, whatever the case may be, right? So the network therefore becomes a bit more complex here. And this is where the need for a blueprint, which then says that if I'm going to launch a new application, how am I going to do it? The agility of it will be defined by that, right? Because if you're going to discover for each application, each segment, each new product, what are the things that you're going to do from a network perspective, it will be a catch-up game. And, earning the right will not be met, right? You'll not earn the right, as Sam was mentioning. So, I really believe that while the whole thing is complex, if you can define, this is my go-to strategy, this is how my blueprint looks like, it's easier for us to have a much more agile and a much more, a strategy which can respond faster.
Yeah, it's really insightful, Raj, and that kind of takes me to my next question here for you, Sam. When you look at client interactions, they're evolving very quickly, especially right now. How has IGM's use of collaboration platforms changed the way financial advisors and clients connect in real time?
Yeah. I think of it as in two areas. The first is the foundations. So, and the language. And what do I mean by that is I think to have great collaboration with your clients or advisors or employees, you got to be able to be seeing the same things. You got to be able to speak the same language, so to speak. So, what we've done in our wealth area, we spent a lot of time on making sure we have an integrated environment, that our advisors can see the right things from our clients, that clients can see the appropriate stuff they want to see, and then you overlay collaboration on top of it. So they're speaking the same language, they're looking at the same document, they're being able to collaborate around that common understanding, whether it's a document, whether it's a financial plan, whether it's a transaction that they're disputing. You know, we've created this environment where we can foster that type of collaboration on a common set of language or data points, I guess is the right term. And then we overlay the collaboration on top of that. So we use different channels. I think someone asked me, I was at a recent event last week, and I had one of the best questions I've had asked for in a long time. And she asked me, she said, "Hey, what's the most important decision you've made in the last 10 years?" And I said, "Oh, that's a tough one." Um, and it actually was, and it was around just before COVID, and we were a little bit farther behind, and we made some decisions on Microsoft and rolling out the suite of productivity tools. Knocking on wood. I remember, and I said, "Hey, listen." A bunch of us of our leadership team sat in a room, and we said, "Hey, let's test the network." Has everybody we ever tested it with everybody working from home? And so we tested it. We never came back. It was a couple years later. With all the COVID stuff happening, but the decision to work towards kind of a new modern collaboration suite and user technology and that, and we're a Microsoft shop, um, that was a great decision in hindsight because we were all remotely. But we'd not been able to do video calls, Teams calls, whatever you said. It could be Zoom or whatever. But that ability for us to collaborate anchors in this instance, Microsoft was one of the tools. We have others, but we really integrate. We integrate these environments. We create the common language, and I think just having the tools back and forth in our business, like the chat and video, is not as powerful unless you have the ability to have a common view of what you're talking about, specifically between client and advisors and operations and contact center. And so just having that common view and data is super important.
Yeah, and Raj, I want to get your vantage point on this as well. But before I go there, Sam, what about security risk management? I mean, just protecting clients and while still enabling innovation while keeping them protected. Just quickly on
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it comes back to maybe my first priority, which is like we have to make sure everything we're doing is secure and is we're managing the privacy aspects of it. We're in financial services. Raj mentioned it's a complex environment, highly regulated. So, we've spent a lot of time doing data classification. So we know every piece of data element in our environment, how it's classified from a privacy and regulatory perspective, and that dictates what we can share and what we can't share in some of these collaboration. Back to your point, Sunny. If we know it's classified as this, we know it doesn't get. Actually, we use in technology make sure it doesn't get presented for a collaboration conversation. If we have a highly piece of confidential information that we've classified, for instance, in our asset management world, that is an algorithm our quantitative team uses for their investing strategies. Well, that's IP. That's confidential information. When we look at large language models and using some of the external tools that are out there, well, we limit that stuff. We don't allow that to get exchanged because it is confidential for us. So I think you're quite. We think about data and the classification of data, and then anchor that on to how we want to collaborate. And if it's items that we shouldn't be showing to collaborate on, we don't.
Okay. Okay. No, thank you for that. And uh, Raj, from your vantage point, I mean, just on both items, right? The collaboration platform, not just internally, but how it's reshaping the customer experience, the client-facing experience, if you will, and then also about what Sam just mentioned with the trust with customers, clients.
Yeah. So, when I think about this industry, I think the primary thing that it is driven on is experience, right? Uh, if I don't have the greatest experience in this industry, I may be looking for something else. I'm sure, Sam, you're also, you talked about experience in the first segment, right? So I'm sure you're also obsessed with experience, right? Whether it's both internal and external. External more so. Client experience is really, really paramount at this point of time. Now, when I think about this industry, therefore, to drive experience, one is, addressing what the client wants. And second is also taking on in the market something the client, has really not thought about it, but it delights them, right? I'll give you an example. For me, I hate filling forms, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Sam. Your forms are large; they're huge, right? And they're like 50 signatures that I hate that, right? Now think about this: that if I'm on a phone with one of your contact center person, when I'm talking about the details, it gets filled in the form. I'd love it. I don't have to fill. And then somebody just sends it on DocuSign. I can sign it, so I don't have to, people don't use their hands any which ways at this point of time. So I use DocuSign to sign. That's experience, but that is expected. Then you can do something which the client doesn't expect, right? Which is where you kind of bring in that delight. Now, when you think about both these things, Sunny, it's also important to your second part of the question, which is on security. This industry, as I mentioned and Sam also reflected on, is extremely conscious about the policies, the regulations, the securities aspects of it, and it's regional in nature, right? Therefore, when I'm using a new tool, just like Sam mentioned, they've built a new tool which does something which is their IP. Where is it pulling data from? Right? Where is it storing data? Those things become the entire data flow becomes extremely important because if you cannot answer where the PII data is, for example, it will be a red flag, right? Security from the way it is happening today is mostly in the model is not very preemptive in nature, and the industry is saying that it is going to move into preemptive, where you don't really wait for the attack to happen and then take the next decisions. The models that is typically used, I'm not going to name those models, but it's moving into the preemptive model where if something needs to be done and you do it, and therefore you're more than secure, right? Specifically with AI attacks coming in, these kind of models, I believe Sunny is going to be the next baseline ask, right? It's not going to be out there, somebody's going to look at it and say, oh, I won that, 5 years down the line. That's going to change.
Raj, I think you probably agree, but if your question said security versus experience, I think probably 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, sometimes they were at odds.
Yeah.
Um, I think now they're more closer together than ever. I think consumer behavior has changed. We expect security as consumers. You know, if I don't see an MFA pop up on my enterprise that I'm dealing with, what's going on? You're not secure. Like
Yeah.
maybe 5 years ago, that would have been, oh, I got to hit another button. I got to hit these steps. Like So I think it's changed. I think the consumer behavior has changed, and I think the technology now allows it to be actually deliver a good experience and not impede it. So I see the kind of at odds really disappearing,
Yeah,
even more so as we go the next 5 years.
100%. I totally agree
Yeah.
with that.
That was a great segment, and it's today's reality. Scaling, securing, and connecting, if you will. But as with most transformations, the journey here was not linear. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's take a look back at how things have changed, and we'll spend just a few minutes on this segment because we also want to talk about innovation a little bit more and future thinking. But the then versus the now and the transformation story behind it. Sam, looking back, you've been in tech leadership for 27, more than 27 years. Was there a pivotal moment that changed the way you approach digital infrastructure?
Yeah, great question. I think in my head there's probably three. The first is the in, that's called the scaling of SaaS, software as a service. Um, I think when that started to, really become at scale, that changed things. It changed the way, you know, people who ran technology and were involved in technology business teams thought about how to consume, buy, and enable technology. So I think SaaS at scale. And then, can you move forward? The next one was a little bit more recent, which was the onslaught of kind of FinTech, and the innovation they drove and are driving. Um, you know, a combination of changing the way traditional SaaS models work, definitely changing, kind of legacy custom home built stuff, and really trying to think differently about a complicated industry and combining that with technology. And so I think that's the second in my head. And the third we're just getting into, which is AI. AI has been happening for a long time, machine learning, etc. But the ability and the leaps and bounds of generative AI, the onslaughts of agents coming, that to me is the next wave of change. And it's here, but I don't think it's not quite at scale yet in certain areas. But those are my three. If you kind of look at it, those are the ones that if you look back at most firms and whether what industry, you could probably look at them and go, those were significant pivot points.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. And Raj, what do you think about this? Across the enterprises you worked with, I mean, there's shifts that have occurred, both cultural and organizational. And how has that helped companies leave legacy thinking, not just systems?
I remember one saying which I heard a long time back that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'm sure Sam, you've heard that, right? Uh, when you think about legacy is both good and not so good. Legacy from a culture perspective is extremely good, right? If you have a culture of trust, like for example, what Tata is known for, that's a very good thing and it should be continued. Legacy, when it comes to technology, is not that good because it leads to obsolescence, it leads to not being in line with your competition, not being in line with what your clients want, right? So when I think about legacy and when I think about what the companies represent, it's a balance, right? In lot of companies which have been there for some time, decades, for example, there will be legacy. You cannot not have that, right? It's if you're a cloud first company, you're born in 2015, maybe you don't have any legacy. But if you're somebody who was, born in early 2000 or, in the late 1990s, you will have some legacy. It cannot be helped because at the end of the day, no CFO in the world will say, okay, I wrote $100 million check, let's write it off. No worries, right? Sam, if you meet a CFO like that, please introduce me. I'll be more than happy to talk to him or her for days, right?
Mm.
So the point is, Sunny, how do we work together, right? And that's the mix that we need to think about out here. The mix between the culture, the legacy in terms of IT infra or telecom infra, and then the new infra and the and telecom, right? How does it work together? How the whole thing scales? How the whole thing maps together, right? And how does somebody actually, ensure that the great experience first, the table stakes, which is earning the right, as Sam mentioned, and then also driving the experience. How are you doing that with that, right? And Sam, I'm sure you have a lot of stories, even now to share in your present architecture. You're driving these through a combination of all three things that I just talked about, right?
Yeah, you know, um, one of the things when I joined here, and we've been refreshing ever since. We're in financial services, and you're gonna have I agree with you, Raj, a mix between legacy and new. Um, our architecture per se at the enterprise level is we really looked at this and said, listen, we gotta have a world where we'll have both. We called it a surround strategy. Um, Meaning we spent a lot of time on building a fairly robust integration layer that will allow us to plug in and plug out as we move forward on the journey. Um, a plug out would be maybe a piece of legacy tech like a CRM platform, and plug in the new one. And we then said, once we have some of these foundations in place, can we what would then be the roadmap for plugging in and out?
Yeah.
And we looked at all, experience, risk, cost. What does this piece of tech actually do? And that links to the risk piece. And so we kind of put parameters around, okay, roadmap that says, when do we get the legacy out, or do we not? Like, some of this stuff, to your point, we keep and we surround it with the other non-legacy items. So that's how we've looked at it. One of the things, and we're not done, we still have some components. I think most financial services firms would still always have some, depending on, their life stage and their size and scale. But one of the things I have found through that journey is, on the risk side, not often is it the technology and some of these legacy. They're built well, they run well. It's more around the speed and flexibility that comes associated with those, and some of those you don't get it. But it's usually the talent I found. In that we've done a lot of analysis with, like, retiring talent that know these legacy systems that are not around anymore. Um, Old languages that nobody really uses anymore. How do you deal with that? And that's what I find typically is one of the major drivers to say, listen, like, we need to get off this piece and we need to unplug it and plug something else in. So it's really that kind of plug and play mid-tier surround strategy that then drove our roadmap for us on how we deal with legacy.
Yeah. And maybe I'll add one thing, Sunny, on top of what
Yeah.
Sam mentioned. Specifically when it comes to new tech, the other thing that Sam, I'm sure, worries about is adoption, right? Adoption of new technology is not what everybody thinks that, oh, I'm going to plug in something and everybody is going to start using it. Never
Right.
happens, right? So while your business case may look positive in 6, 9 months, in reality, it may actually look positive in 18 months because the adoption never happened in the first 6 months, right? People said, oh, I like the last GUI, this new GUI is not intuitive, blah, blah, blah. A lot of feedback will come like that, Sam, right? And finally, there'll be trainings, there'll be push, and then they'll say, oh, you know what? I like this new one, it's better. And then they'll start using it. And in the beginning, also what will happen is people will do mistakes, and that may also lead to some security concerns, right?
Mhm.
So it's a mixed bag of things, which I'm sure Sam has to handle. When legacy, everything known, but things are not that flexible. New adoption problems, security bugs, people issues, and how to take things forward and meet the first two things that we said, right? Table stakes and experience.
Mhm. Yeah, on the adoption front, yeah, I mean it's funny you have some things that are just so ingrained in the business process that you're gonna have to do it. Like our workforce productivity tools, I'd say, of the things we use every day, it's 99% adoption because it's just ingrained in what we do. And then there's other pieces where you go, it's not there. One of the things I've found successful is that partnership with your business teams. Is whether it comes through a product owner type setup in an agile delivery or persistent teams, but really that person who owns it from a business perspective that is usually not in technology, but it's a partnership with them that says, okay, well, we have this technology out there now. How do we get people to use it? One of the things we've done here is we've actually set up a kind of a SWAT team, if you will, that the technology's there. They know our business processes from an advisor perspective and our wealth businesses, and they actually go and support people to adopt the technology. So that's an example. Others is the product owner, but engaging with the business teams who know the business process the best, to me, is what drives the highest adoption.
Yeah, great perspective from both of you on how far things have come. Now let's turn to the future, because the next wave of AI is probably a few waves remaining. Uh, Data and edge technologies is already reshaping what's possible. So our final segment here is going to be about innovation and future thinking. Sam, first to you, I want to know, as IGM continues to invest in AI and advanced data platforms, how are you preparing your infrastructure to support things like
Yep.
AI driven insights and IoT at the edge of client interactions?
Yeah, it's as I mentioned earlier, I think it's the next step, the wave that's upon us now. That, and I agree with you. There's many more to come here. Um, so the if I describe a little bit about our journey over the last, and this is a fast journey, many of the others 18 to 24 months. Um, one of the first things we did is we leveraged our partners and different and partnership models we have, but we wanted to get um, we wanted to get some of these conversational AI components in people's hands. So as quickly as we could. So we scaled that very quickly so people could use it in a secure fashion. It was conversational AI. It was simple prompts. It was people could get it and they're going, oh, they can use it at home, right? If they're pulling up their, whatever tool they'd want to use at home. But in the enterprise, we didn't have something yet. And so we went very quickly to say, let's get something we know it's secure, we know it's good, and get people to use it. And so people started using it. And now they're understanding how they move, how they're getting that into their business processes. But that was kind of step one. And then step two is we said, all right, well, this space is moving so quickly. To your point around architecture and how we think about how we're going to uh, be be agile enough, if that's the right word, to adopt some of this change and these new capabilities. And so we've really employed and spent some time thinking about an open architecture in the AI space. And what I mean by that is we designed a open architecture in a way that we know we will have, I will call it, very specific, custom, bespoke models for specific areas of our business. We know we will have more generalist models, conversational components. Some of that might be enterprise, some of that might be specific for a business, but we know these different kind of models exist and it's out there. We know we will have um, agents across our environments, and some will be again very specialized, and some will be general. So we've kind of set up this architecture in order to be able to accommodate this. Um, with a few things. Is one is making sure none of this stuff works without the right data and foundational data, as you know, so that even if we're in a SaaS or a commercial off the shelf type of solution, we can get access to that data to enable some of these models, whether they're generic or they're not. So first is kind of get people to try it and understand it in the business process of the enterprise, and second is really create an environment that has an open architecture that allows us to kind of build and create these models either on our own or rent them or buy them in a secure manner. So that's how we're thinking about it technically. And then outside of that, we're really putting a lot of focus in with what I love about the way we're approaching it as a firm is it's not just technology driven. I think AI is a technology. And we've got to put the right risks and cyber and controls around it that you would with any piece of technology. Um, but it, but I love the fact that it is so profound. It can change the way we do business and our business processes. So that way, you got to have a business engaged team, and then you have to have your talent and resources and human resources team engaged. So we really treat it that way from a business technology and human resources and talent perspective, because I think that's the only way people are going to be successful in the next 10 waves of this stuff.
Yeah, and I want Raj. I want to ask you. I mean, based on what Sam's saying, I mean, let's look a little bit broadly, right? Like where are you seeing the most practical use cases for AI and automation in the industry today?
Yeah. So very good question. Practical being the term out here, right? There are very cool use cases for AI. You can turn your picture into something else. That's not that cool. Then practical is specifically when it comes to enterprise, the biggest area that I'm seeing is customer experience. Omnichannel has been here for some time now, right? We've been hearing omnichannel for 10 years, but then what does it really mean when it comes to a experience of the client from moving to one to the other channel? And then what does it mean for the enterprise of driving those channels, right? Can it become agentless for level one? Is it possible? Can it be more seamless for a client? Can I give better, uh, offers back to my client? Can I do better QC? So, being from this industry, I'm sure Sam knows that it's mandated that you have to do quality check of your contact center, right? Sunny, today, if you have to do quality check of your calls, a typical quality check will cost in millions of dollars. I'm not going to go into details, but not more than 25-30% of the calls are actually taken into consideration out there because you cannot do all the calls. The volume is too large. When you look at AI, you can actually do 100% of the calls at half the cost. Okay. So, this is practical, right? So when you think about AI, what it is doing is it is bringing lot of these things in the customer experience area, which clients like, IGM wanted to do some time back, couldn't do because of either cost or because it took too much time, can do it today. And that is where I would say that, maybe in the next 6 months to 18 months, you will see a sea change in the way the customer interactions happen in this industry per se, because this industry is obsessed with experience, right? And there'll be a flurry of things which will happen. I'm 100% sure in this industry from that perspective.
I agree.
Yeah, that's that's a great perspective, Raj, and thank you for that. Sam, I'm going to give you. I'm gonna go back to you. I'm gonna ask you a little bit of a loaded question here, right? So bear with me. So, if you had a blank canvas to reimagine IGM's next generation digital backbone,
Mm.
would you prioritize speed, sustainability, or flexibility? But at the same time, you know, how how do you see all of that evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? Let's just combine. Let's do a
Yeah.
two-pronged question here. If you could answer that for me.
So flexibility, speed, or sustainability. I I prioritize flexibility first, and why is because I always believe the best approach is to have options, and not to get anchored or pigeonholed into something you have to do versus something you chose to do. So I think flexibility is one. Um, I think if you have the right, whether you're talking about a flexible architecture or open architectures, or you're talking about um, how you set up your digital backbone, I think if you have that flexibility, you can move at pace. You can move at speed because you've got the right partners in place. And if I come to our example, the kind of plug and play build approach, and or buy approach, depending on how you want to plug in for the certain area. But if you select that along the right partner in the right way, I think it leads to your third point, which is sustainability. And my definition is long term. In that you've got something that you can build with over time. It's not a acute and limited use case. And so I think of it in that order. Flexibility, to drive options so you don't get cornered into something, which should drive the right speed. If you pick the right partners, and that should be for the right duration.
Brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, and before Sam, before you get to the other piece of looking ahead, Raj, if you could just jump in here and just provide your thoughts. And you touched upon this earlier, but now, how are you seeing enterprises design networks, especially with the growing risk of cyber threats?
Um, it's still a mystery. But then it's a good problem because see what Sam just mentioned is extremely interesting because many CIOs will agree to Sam. And if they do not have a concrete thought, I'm sure after this podcast, they're going to say, let me follow Sam, right? Sam, you're going to get some mails, I'm sure, after this. You've heard me before, there is one recurring word that I use, blueprint. It is so very important. Many times people just dive into execution without the strategy and the blueprint. It's not going to go anywhere. And blueprints, Sunny, is never about one thing. It's about the entire thing. When you think about the network, what is it serving? It's serving the business. Business is serving who? The clients. Okay, how is it playing a role? Now, if you just build a network blueprint for connecting the offices, believe me, it's not what Sam mentioned, right? When he's
Mm.
talking about flexibility in the core, flexibility in the blueprint, what he's saying is, in my blueprint, which is serving the client, the entire business flow, where does network play a role? Where does compute play a role? Where does the applications play a role? And so on and so forth. In that, what can I plug in? What can I plug out? Who will be my partners and so on and so forth. Now, this is where, think about, to simplify network is connecting left to the right. Left is the users, clients, IoT devices, so on and so forth. And right is the application, which is on cloud or data center or wherever else, right? SaaS. So you connect left to the right in a secure manner at the most optimal cost, right? Without complicating the whole thing. Now, when you think about connectivity, it's a combination of LAN, then WAN, then overlay, which is SD on top of it, then multi-cloud, and then taking care of the security and the landing zone so that you're not making a huge mess of the multi-cloud and the MCN architecture, right? Please, once you define that this is how my blueprint is going to look like, Tomorrow, when you add a cloud instance, it's going to be easy for you. Tomorrow, when you add an application, it's going to be easy for you. Tomorrow, when you go to a SaaS player, it's going to be easy for you, right? So the repetitive mantra out here, I'd say, is blueprint, ensure that it can take plugins, as Sam correctly mentioned, and choose the partners who can actually scale and then is sustainable, or somebody who can take you to the future and doesn't either become, vendor risk is they become bankrupt, and tech risk is you become obsolete, right? So these two things should not happen, and they should actually take you to the future.
Thank you for that, Raj. Okay, Sam, final statement here. All right. Just want to know 3 to 5 years ahead, or however long you see fit, collaboration platforms. How are they going to evolve to help advisors, clients stay connected?
I I'm gonna steal. I was at an event last week. I'm gonna steal an individual who posed a question. He says, "I don't know if we're gonna need websites in the future." Um, I think we're going to be interacting with a conversational bot, an agent. Um, and then I think humans will be able to interact with that. So to be a tri-party, I don't know if it's 5 years. Maybe some of that's happening in 5 years at this pace, but I think that collaboration, this traditional, it'd be multi-mediums, it'd be agents, people, clients in our space, advisors, could be institutional clients, but I do think that whole hardening of that agent's capability in collaboration is going to happen.
Can I add something here, Sam? Just
Yeah.
one step forward. What I really think is going to happen is that there'll be an agent of Sam, which will be talking to whichever agent that Sam wants to talk to. You will not be doing the talking anymore, right? And that will be the next level of collaboration where you will say, for example, today, what we do is to a typical AI like ChatGPT, we ask a question, it goes, searches, gives you a consolidated report, right? What you will do is you will tell your agent, I want to do this following thing. This is my calendar. What can you automate? Go and talk to, for example, my Broadband Claire to do this, my insurance agent to do that, and so on and so forth. And that is the new, task layer which will come in. And, your productivity, my productivity will just go up is what I really think.
Excellent. Excellent. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Hyperconnected Journeys. A big thank you to the both of you, Sam, for sharing how IGM Financial is building a resilient and innovative technology foundation, and to you, Raj, for bringing us the broader industry lens. We hope this conversation gave you a glimpse into how financial services are embracing digital transformation, scaling with purpose, and preparing for a future shaped by AI and connected collaboration. Don't forget to subscribe, and hope you can join us again. Thank you.
Thank
a lot.
you.